For those of you who might be wondering how this review is going to work out, let me give you a small indication. This has been my laptop's wallpaper for the past several weeks ever since the show started, and it's still up. Yeah, it's going in that direction. Kill la Kill. Now, the story of Kill la Kill is pretty simple and straightforward at first. It follows a young woman by the name of Rio Koo who goes to Honolulu Academy in order to challenge the Academy's Elite Four, or the Student Council as we would probably know them, and their Student Council President by the name of Satsuki Kurian, or as everyone else calls her by the name of Lady Satsuki, in order to avenge the death of her father. However, getting the answers out of the Elite Four, and especially Lady Satsuki, is not going to be easy, because pretty much all of the students, or at least all the elite students, especially the Student Council, are wearing what's known as Goku uniforms. No, not that Goku, although that would be pretty awesome. And each of these Goku uniforms have different ranks. Given the number of stars that are on the uniforms, this will allow them to reach a certain level of power and attain a certain ability. And depending on what club you are in, that will also depend on what you can specialize in terms of a power. And each one of the different club members and club presidents has a different power and ability. And depending on their uniform, it will show what they can do. Soon after arriving at the academy, Rio Koo acquires a kamui, which is basically a sailor uniform that she dons, and it allows her to transform into a, how do I put this, rather revealing hero-type figure, or super-powered embodied character. That's the best way. I wouldn't say superhero, but it's the best way I can say it. She gains this outfit in order to acquire superpowers, and basically her strength goes through the roof. Now that she has acquired this outfit by the name of Senketsu, as she's called it, she now goes into the Elite Four and tries to fight each and every one of them in order to confront Lady Satsuki and ultimately answer the questions of her father's murder. And while I did admit this sounded simple at first, for the sake of spoilers, I will not go any further into the plot than I already have. One of the main reasons I was curious about this show was the fact that it was directed by Hiroyuki Yamashita, who has worked on several other productions such as Fooly Cooly, which is one of my all-time favorite animes ever, Gurren Lagann, which is one of the most inspiring animes I've ever seen, Panty and Stocking, which is the first anime I ever reviewed a while back. So naturally you can understand why I would be particularly curious about this new production. Now, after seeing the opening, I know you're smart enough to know where this is gonna go. I had a freaking blast with this show. I absolutely loved it. Every single episode of it, none of it felt stale. All of it was really interesting, action-filled, completely over the top, insane, balls out, epicness. I'm having a hard time summing up my thoughts, honestly, to describe how much I enjoyed Kill la Kill. Let me calm down just a little bit, just so that way I can explain why is it that the show in particular comes across as very exhilarating. The first thing I have to mention about this show is the action. My lord, is this action ever awesome, and unapologetic too. Every single action scene they have in here is so much fun to watch. The battles themselves, just hearing the swords and the blades clash, or hearing fists collide with each other. Every little sound, you hear it in the background, and it just makes you feel like that impact is really happening. The sound guys, whoever did the sound for this, props to you, because you did a fantastic job on this. Every little thing about this show, even the clicks of Satsuki's heels, whenever you hear them hit the ground, you actually feel like they're there on the ground and hit there. It has a sense of impact. And it works. It all works. And the action itself, it ratchets to a level of, say, I don't want to say Gurren Lagann-esque proportions, but given the fact that it's from the same director of Gurren Lagann, you can kind of see the similarities in style and the similarities in scope. And so, with that said, the scope of Kill la Kill, I will say it doesn't reach the grandiose levels of Gurren Lagann, but that's okay. It's not supposed to. This is its own thing. All I'm trying to do is emphasize a little bit of a comparison and just say, like, while this is technically a little bit more grandiose in terms of the sheer scale and the stakes of it all, Kill la Kill is also epic in its own right, in a different way, and it's okay. That's a good thing. It allows it to fill its own identity. Not only is the action well executed, but the soundtrack complements the action perfectly in pretty much every single instance of the show. If it says anything, I already have the soundtrack right here, and I love playing it in my car. Every little tune in this is a lot of fun to listen to. It emphasizes the drama where it needs to, it emphasizes the action, it emphasizes the sad moments. It all perfectly complements each scene in which the soundtrack comes into play. Now we're going to move on to the character section, but since there's a lot of them to get through, I'm only going to focus on really 3, and I'll mention the side characters in passing. With the first 3, let's go start with Rio Koo. Rio Koo, I will admit, I can understand why some people would have a problem with her. She is a bit of a hothead. She is one of those actions speak louder than words types. But at the same time, I can't really blame her for doing some of the things that she does. Because either A, she's not thinking straight, or B, she's one of those people that absolutely hates it whenever you try to speak all these grandiose, blow hot air speeches and monologue without having the action or the bravado or the kudos to back it up. She's really one of those actions speak louder than words types, and I cannot emphasize this enough. You don't say what you're gonna do, just do it and give it everything you have. That's the type of girl that Rio Koo is. Again, I can understand if people find Rio Koo annoying, and I don't blame them for that. If it's just your personal taste in a character, that's okay. But honestly, there's nothing inconsistent about her character, and there's nothing that comes across as incredibly annoying. Yes, she is an action speak louder than words person. Yes, she is a hothead. But in the sense, you can't honestly blame her, because let's be honest, how many times have any one of us, including me, has sat in an auditorium, listened to someone speak, and just think to ourselves, yes, you can go on and on and on and on about this speech, and you can say all these great, wonderful things about change and how we're going to fix things and how everything's going to work out, but unless you have the action in order to emphasize that point, in order to emphasize what you're going to do and actually prove it to people, you're just blowing hot air into the wind. And so that's a commendable factor I find in Rio Koo. And there's nothing majorly inconsistent with her character until it gets to one point in the series. Now, I can understand if some people might have a problem with the writing of this show and might say, hold on, Perry, one of the biggest things you say about a show is inconsistency. This is an inconsistency in character. As a counter-argument to that, yes, if you've watched the series, you would point this out to me. However, my counter-argument to that, and I'm trying to keep this as spoiler-free as possible, it's not an inconsistency in character because of the manipulated nature in which Rio Koo is acting under. It's sort of like, now follow me on this example, Darth Vader in the Star Wars saga. Darth Vader by himself is not an evil person. He's just incredibly twisted. In fact, it's mentioned in episode 6 where Ben Kenobi says he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil. But there's still people that believe there is good in him, like his son Luke Skywalker. And whenever you see Rio Koo acting under this influence, you kind of understand it's like, okay, we know under normal circumstances that Rio Koo would never act like this, but this is not normal circumstances, and so it's not an inconsistency in character, it's a manipulation under different circumstances that causes her to act it this way. And so once that time has passed, there is no inconsistency in character. So there's that point, and that's just my counter-argument towards that. Moving on to other characters such as Mako, I must admit, I was a little bit worried that Mako was going to be a little bit annoying, be that one annoying comedic side character that is just slightly irritable, I'll put that mildly. But, much to my surprise, Mako probably became one of the most enjoyable and inspiring aspects of the show, and how steadfast and loyal she is to Rio Koo. Even in points where the two might be disagreeable with each other, they are still friends, and Mako will do whatever it takes to make sure that Rio Koo is safe and Rio Koo is safe for Mako, vice versa. What leads into probably the most interesting aspect of the show is Lady Satsuki. Satsuki was a villain-like character in how just vindictive, how controlling, and how just sheer cold, Ice Queen-like that she was being towards her to the students that under her rule. She pretty much runs the school like a dictator, but Satsuki seems to embody 3 types of villains that I have emphasized before as being among the most memorable, at least whenever I've seen people comment on films and games and different series regarding villains. There's 3 types. One villain you love to hate, the villain that makes sense, the villain who you sympathize with. And Satsuki seems to embody a little bit of each of those. She emphasizes the one you love to hate because of the sheer cold, vindictive nature he has at the beginning of the show. The villain who makes sense because the reason why she is doing this and what she ultimately is trying to convey in order to get her point across to Rio Koo, the main character, because she really does have a good point when it came to, how do I put this, overcoming shame, shall we say, and what she ultimately says in order to get this point across. So in that regard, she does make sense. The villain that you sympathize with, because then, once you find a certain revelation during the course of the show, you ultimately kind of feel sorry for her. At least I did whenever I was going through the show. And it came across as saying, you know what? Given the fact of the life that you've grown up with and the people that you've had to put up with through your whole life, and knowing these certain circumstances and having something like this taken away from you, I can understand why you would be as vindictive and as determined to do what you want to do as possible. Even the side characters are all very memorable and have their own moments to shine. The Elite Four, Maka's family, and even the resistance group known as Nudistovicha. Sorry, I had to emphasize that part because it is how it's pronounced in the show, and it is hilarious. Now, for those who have watched my show for a little while, you know that one of the biggest things I never, ever take into critiquing something and use it as a negative or a positive is fan service. And yes, that is very present in this show a lot, both for guys and girls, okay? Not just one way here. But in this show, it is present. And that's all I'm going to say, is that it is in there. I'm not going to say how excessive it is, how minimalistic it is, because let's be honest, if you see any screenshots of this, if you see anything talking about it, you know this is a show that is not going to apologize and hold back. And the presentation they had for the show, my lord, is it beautiful. There's tons of colors, tons of really intense dark lights, just to emphasize the attitude, the conviction, and the intensity of the emotion. It all worked for this show. And again, with the colors, it was just so bright and vivid, and it just felt, it all complemented everything together. The contrast of dark blue and red versus white and blue, watching all that together, seeing all those colors clash together, especially whenever there was a rainbow present, it was just overall wonderful to look at. As you can tell, I'm already gushing over this show. I had an absolute blast with it, so I'll go ahead and sum up my thoughts pretty quick. The presentation, outstanding. The music perfectly complements the atmosphere of the show and its style. The characters, all memorable. The action, absolutely bonkers, insane, over-the-top awesomeness. So in the end, I'm going to have to say that Kill la Kill is absolutely worth every penny. So there you go, folks. That is my review of Kill la Kill. I hope you enjoyed it. And to wrap this up quickly, how about I ask you this one simple little question? What is your favorite over-the-top anime that you've ever seen, if you have one? Mine would probably be Gurren Lagann, just because of the sheer scope of it and how completely insane it all gets. But that's another review for another time, and that will probably come a little bit sooner than you might think. So anyway, guys, comment below, tell me what you think of this show. If your tastes in the show disagree with mine, that's perfectly fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I will try to be as respectful to yours as I can. Until next time, everybody, I'm Perry the One-Armed Legend. You name it, I can play it.